Um, but here, let's get into the news. And the first bit, I was waiting to see stuff because I saw this on Monday. And I was honestly like at work, I was waiting to see update. Not gonna happen. But there's talks of a Batgirl movie in the DC extended universe. Or yeah, the extended universe. The same universe that has Batman versus Superman, the Batman, all that stuff, and it's gonna be directed by Joss Whedon. Now, it's not 100% official. He's nearing a deal to write, direct, and produce on the untitled Batgirl pick for Warner Brothers. Um, but yeah, and there's no one else attached to this at all. There's no other producers, no other.
Well, it also
It's
came
just
out of nowhere. It's not like
yeah,
anybody's been talking about, hey, so this Batgirl movie we're working on needs a director and stuff. Like we have movies that have been on the docket for a year or two that have gone through multiple directors that don't have scripts, that hands keep changing, that people keep saying, is this going to happen or not? Like, ain't nobody got faith in a Cyborg movie at this point, I think. But we're getting little hints that there might be a Nightwing movie, there might be some other ones, and all of a sudden this drops. And this is not just like, oh yeah, we're thinking about doing a Batgirl movie. It's like, no. While you're sitting there and you're already saying, why would they do a Batgirl movie out of all the fucking Joss Whedon's attached?
yeah,
And that is a killer move for Warner Brothers at this time, because Joss Whedon obviously made the Avengers happen, and then went to town helping out with all of the Marvel Universe overall until he got through Avengers 2, Age of Ultron, which was also a huge successful movie. Complaints aside, um,
yeah,
and got burnout. So it's a big get to get Marvel's huge director of their jump in the fucking fire franchise for one. But then
yeah.
there's the whole other aspect of this is Joss fucking Whedon. People who were proclaiming their god, to replace George Lucas several years ago when Firefly was happening and when Serenity was happening. Uh,
Yeah.
this is the guy who did Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which just celebrated its 20-year anniversary and is still considered one of the biggest feminist icons of TV. I was listening to some random channel on my Google Music the other day, and all of a sudden a Dr. Horrible song started playing. I'm like, oh shit, I
Yep.
forgot all about Dr. Horrible. That thing fucking killed, and that was something he did on his own, when he was, again, burnt out
He did.
from running under big companies.
And here's the other part, because you mentioned that, Dr. Horrible was on this. He did a fucking Shakespeare movie on a weekend
Yes,
just for fun.
just for the fun. But that's
Yes.
different. Dr. Horrible to me is a big example of I'm burnt out on Hollywood right now, or I'm burnt out on working with TV and shit and trying to do stuff under their goddamn rule. So I'm going to do something that's all my own and sell on the internet and make more money than I probably ever have by doing that. And then he goes and he gets back into Hollywood again, and he makes one of the biggest success stories in films of all time, and the first big screen superhero group movie,
Yeah.
um, combining all these characters from all these other films and making it work really well and getting people jazzed. Gets burnt out again by the process, by working with production companies, by working on everybody else's ideas that are kind of like standing in the way of what he wants his vision to be. We haven't even mentioned Cabin in the Woods, which is another thing that was just kind of like subverted of, hey, we're going to do this little horror movie and see how it goes. Not a huge success in the theaters, but one of those things that people have picked up on it and realized that they loved it a lot more as it's gone
Yeah.
along. I think that it's just incredible to think of Joss Whedon saying, okay, I'll get back into doing a big budget film, and I'll get back into doing superheroes, by going over to what is effectively the competition of Marvel. I don't think that that's his thought process on it. I think it's like they came to him and they said, we're having some challenges with our superhero cinematic universe. We're looking at some new voices. We're looking at some new talent. We're looking for some new ideas, but we're looking for people who we think would be good making these kinds of movies. And obviously you are. And if we have the right property for you, and another thing to keep in mind is Joss 10 years ago was working on Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And that fell apart again because he couldn't get agreement with the producers on it. And he's just like, fine, I'll just walk away. And the person who was his choice for Wonder Woman wound up in the Avengers movies. And that's Kobe Smulders. So it's like, yeah, let's see if we can get Joss to do this. So it's not inked. Everybody who's talked about it has said, we're not 100% sure about all of this yet. But nobody who's heard it has said, what a terrible idea.
It's weird because it's one of those things that makes absolute sense. I'm actually going to read Beat's statement he made before Evan joined us. He goes, WB's is just as original as always, doing quotes of like two different guys. We need a guy like Joss Whedon was for Marvel. Well, let's get Joss Whedon. Great idea. I mean, it's that sort of thing. Like, I mean, this is it because, I mean, if you look at just the DC extended universe stuff, they launched with Man of Steel, followed by Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Suicide Squad, which won an Oscar. And then they have Wonder Woman, Justice League, and then Aquaman, all with dates. Like, there's times where they're going to be coming out. And some of the things that because they have this big long list of movies that they've got scheduled from now until 2022 or whatever. But that seems like that's falling apart quicker than a drunk guy pulling out a tile of a Jenga tile. And so, I mean, it seems like okay, let's do this. Let's look at this a different way. Let's look at this more like what Marvel did with. We need, like, what would get a director, what would he want to do, and all that. Like, I mean, even the Batman movie is falling apart here because, I mean, we went from Ben Affleck writing it, starring in it, directing it, to, oh well, he's just going to direct it and star in it, to, oh, he's not going to do he's just going to star in it, to the people going, well, is he going to be leaving it? And stuff like that. And it's just, at this time, it's like, I feel like this is DC really starting to get the right idea here of not focusing on this big, trying to do this big universe and just go, let's tell great stories.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is you have to, if you want to create a cohesive cinematic universe, and I can understand absolutely why you do and why you should and how these things need to coexist. And so you have to take into account, well, if we get a Batgirl, how is she going to relate to J.K. Simmons as Commissioner Gordon, who's being introduced in Justice League this year? How is she going to relate to Ben Affleck as Batman? How are we going to make this all work? And it's a question that you have to say to Joss, we know that you got a little burned out working in an extended universe. Are you going to be okay with doing this? And I think it's a matter of how much carte blanche are they giving him to control of the character and stuff, and trusting him that it will work with everything else when necessary, but not necessarily in his own movie where he's got to establish his own things. Now, if this comes out fast, it conceivably could come out before the Batman movie that's being worked on by Affleck and Johns and everybody else. So it could be more of our first introduction to a lot of the staples of Gotham City than anything else. It could be our first introduction to a lot of the characters from the Batman universe. Other than her dad, it's important to have someone who has a respect for the original material, who has respect for working with the team, which Joss does because of his writing in TV for so long. He's always had a huge staple of writers, very talented people that he's trusted and have trusted him and has a good relationship with creatively. Um, it takes somebody with some finesse. And I look at the other rumors are things like Matthew Vaughn possibly taking over the Man of Steel sequel, which would be an inspired choice. And Matthew Vaughn has been critical of the dark tone used on Superman. And he says that's not how he would do Superman. And maybe that's why they go to him, because everybody keeps saying, oh, well, Superman's too dark and he's too dour and he's not Superman enough. Well, maybe this is the kind of thing that helps fix that. Because if you know, if you got Joss Whedon, you can have dark, but he's going to interject comedy. He's going to interject emotion other than just angst, grit in your teeth. Because he doesn't stay in one tone for too long. Even his darkest films have lightness to them. And it's what makes them enjoyable, because it breaks up tension when it needs to be broken up, but then it brings the tension back when it's supposed to be there. I really want to see this as a positive sign. I hope that this happens. It was one of those things when I saw the story hit, it was right before April Fool's Day, and I was like, time zones make me scared for this. But I really want it to happen. And there's been no outright denial, which I think is great. But it's just it's working in any kind of big company thing like this is always scary and intimidating and tough to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. So I hope nothing fucks it up. We're seeing rumors of casting. One of the big lead potentials, I don't know her, but she's from The 100 on CW, which makes a certain degree of sense. I don't know anything about her acting, but I think that she could be good, and under Joss's tutelage, she should be great. So we'll see. We'll absolutely see what happens.
I mean, I honestly, I hope that this does go through with things, because if at the very least, for like I said earlier, for it to open up, for DC to see, oh, how do we make successful movies? Get the right director, get the right people involved, not just go by people who have made us, decent amount of money. When here, I honestly feel like they could be passing, if they were to just do with, the Zack Snyder, show that they've got going on, that they could be passing up on other, great talent that could get stifled because their vision is so different from his. In this universe that they're setting up for themselves, and that they're slowly pigeonholing themselves into.
I mean, I certainly I saw the preview for Justice League, and a lot of people really like it, and I've been pulled in by the previews of the other movies too. I certainly bought into Suicide Squad's preview. I bought into Man of Steel's hardcore before we knew where that was going to go. I didn't buy into Batman v Superman as much, just because I knew from previous experience it was the same guy. He didn't seem to change his attitude. He just kept trying to say, oh, well, we did all that, but because it's gonna lead to this better stuff in this movie. And everything I saw in that movie didn't look like he had learned his lesson. But it's still, the trailers look good.
Yeah. And
the Justice League trailer looks good. I'm still just not convinced that this guy has changed his stripes. But I'm still hopeful. I always want these movies to be good. I do not want DC to fail in their movies. And DC has made movies that I've absolutely loved before over time, before there were Marvel movies to really compete with them. I don't wish them any will. I really hope that this is a sign that we're getting things that are going to start going towards a direction that I can enjoy as well as everybody else, hopefully. But certainly Barbara Gordon is one of my favorite characters. They're saying that it will feel similar to Gail Simone's run on the book in the New 52. Now, the words New 52 don't exactly make me feel great, but it depends on what they pull from that. Like, there's a lot of things that can work from that, and there's a lot of things that maybe they could skip over. It's not going to be like 25 issues shoved into a 2-hour movie, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Now I didn't hear that part, but and
It's all
so I
rumor
do,
conjecture, anyways.
yeah, and that gets me a little worried because where I loved Gail Simone's run on Batgirl, I loved the Babs Tarr, Cameron Fletcher, uh I forget the third guy. They're doing Motor Crush now, their run, with the Batgirl of Burnside. I really like that over it.
I
Um
like that a lot too. Visually it was very different. Tonally it was certainly different. My big thing is someone said this on Twitter today. I randomly saw a tweet, and that was basically, uh, I would love to see a movie, a Batgirl movie where the Killing Joke has nothing to do with it in any way, shape, or
exactly.
form, and maybe never even happened. Um, I hope that it isn't a movie where we have to deal with the, oh, Jared Leto's Joker was around and shot Barbara and she's just gotten over being paralyzed. That's a lot to deal with. But again, if it's Joss doing it, I know Joss would do it right. Whatever
Yeah.
that looks to be, if he chooses to include it or not, I know that Joss would be the right person, one of the right people to choose to make that story happen and be palatable. So yeah, good on you, DC. If you can make this work, right on.
Yeah. Our next news story is the Daily Show's Jordan Klepper is getting his own show in the Stephen Colbert, Larry Wilmore time slot. Excuse me. Um, so this is something that I've been wondering forever, for the longest time, what was going to happen. Because we all know that, the Daily Show has been a huge success. It's what, 20 years now, I think it's been on the air. Um,
Close.
yeah, I mean, and with that we've seen two spin-offs of it, one very successful, one not so much, with the Colbert Report, and then the show that wasn't as successful, with the nightly show. And it looks like Jordan Klepper is going to be filling in that 11:30 time slot this fall.
Yeah, and
And
Klepper's character on the Daily Show lends itself more to a Colbert than Wilmore did. Wilmore did his show basically being himself. Colbert played a
yeah,
character that felt, that's what made a difference between what he was doing and what Jon Stewart was doing. Jon Stewart, you watched and you got the very liberal, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn by saying this, the very liberal viewpoint that Jon Stewart has, which frankly I pretty much agree with most of the time. And then you had Colbert play a faux uh, conservative,
yeah,
and do it as a caricature that a lot of conservatives would watch and buy into what he was saying and not realizing the humor that was being played there. But Faux Riley, good job, Beat. Um, the the uh, the thing with Klepper is I think Klepper can do something similar because his character is not often serious. He always
yeah,
seems to be doing this kind of subverting humor wise from the back and forth he has with Trevor Noah and what he had with Jon Stewart when Jon was still on the air. I'm not going to say that Klepper is my favorite of the correspondents on the show, and most of the correspondents that I like aren't even on the show anymore. Many of them left. Jessica Williams would have been a big choice for me, either to replace John on the show itself or to have a spinoff. Another one. I can't even think of them all right now. My brain is blanking. But Klepper is good. But you're right. It is too bad that Wilmore's show wasn't more successful, and uh, it's hard shoes to fill. It's one thing to say that the Daily Show continues on, and it's just a new person in the Daily Show seat, and that itself showed some struggles switching from John over to Trevor. But having someone come in with a new show to replace Colbert, I think, is probably even harder. And Colbert,
Yeah,
it took a while to grow on me, his show.
yeah. So, okay, I'm gonna read this quote from the article, and this is from the press release. Klepper's show will look to embrace and define the chaos of our country by channeling Klepper's steadfast attitude that institutions are to be trusted less than the lies of the mainstream. Oh, did I say lamestream? I meant mainstream media. Um, and he'll surround himself with a hand-picked team of contributors contractually obligated to reinforce his singularly correct worldview. So yeah, it sounds like this is going to be more Colbert Report, less nightly show, which I honestly welcome, and I think this is a good point or a good thing, because where I've been enjoying at midnight, I don't like the fact that a lot of their stuff, it seems to be um like a little bit like they're forcing a political side on or a political thing on these,
It sounds as out
because
of hand as Jimmy Fallon doing it now.
yeah,
Jimmy Fallon has been losing numbers, losing stream since Trump's election, and a lot of people felt like he was too soft on Trump when he was on there. And Colbert, since going back to more of his Colbert Report persona, has been picking up numbers, although not in the
yeah,
demographic that makes the most sense to advertisers. But he is gaining for the first time, and so Fallon is trying to do more political stuff. I saw him doing a commercial the other night where he's talking about the guests we're going to be on, and then he said, "And we're going to talk about Trump this in the opening monologue." And I'm like, "Well, you're really pushing that you can do political, and I don't think you can, because I
yeah,
don't think that's his stick. His shtick." So it depends on who it is. If you have
yeah.
political humor leanings, we can tell.
No, yeah, definitely. But yeah, I mean, time will tell. I'm honestly excited because it does seem like Comedy Central is, is testing a lot of the grounds for shows in that late night time slot. Because I know Moshe Kasher's got something coming up. Uh, Corey got a little verklempt here. I wish I had that SNL joke memorized like I used to. Did you just see Madonna? Is that what happened?
Barbara.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah, Barbara,
gorgeous.
that's
You're
right.
gorgeous, Barbara. Yeah. Sorry, I sneezed, then all of a sudden my voice just said, I'm just gonna stop. Um, yeah, you need to have somebody who can actually run these things. The people I was thinking of besides, and yeah, we've got people who spun off from the show, like Samantha Bee, whose show is fantastic. John Oliver's show on HBO is absolutely great. And we've got Colbert on TV doing Colbert Report bits again on his late show. So it's it's hard to steal away from the guy who started it, who's on at the same time on a main channel as opposed to a cable channel. It's more of a factor of, hey, if you like the Daily Show and you don't feel like pressing those couple of buttons to switch, stick around for this guy who was just on the Daily Show not too long ago and get more of it.
Yeah. So, the final story we got for this segment is that John Layman, the writer and creator, one of the co-creators of Chew, his next creator-owned comic will have a crossover with Chew in mind. Now there is not a lot here to this article, but you guys may remember that, because actually I think I talked about this like a couple months ago when the last issue came out. Um, but John Layman and Rob Gilroy or Guillory, they had concluded the creator-owned series Chew, which was about an alien invasion. With that had a bird flu that made poultry contraband, and a smorgasbord of food powers. I mean, I think you were the person who turned me on to this book because you had talked about all the different powers. And you talked about the main character, Tony Chu, who was a Chibopath, and then explaining that a Chibopath, he gets the memories of anything that he's eaten, and stuff like that. And I fell in love with this book. Um, and
Yeah,
so
I mean, I was definitely enjoying Chew. It was one of those things that I lost my ability to catch up with it, and it is one of the books that as soon as I'm ready to get back into reading comics regularly, that will be one of my first stops. Because it is phenomenally good. It was never a moment of like, oh, I'm bored of Chew right now. It was just I was burnt out on comics overall.
yeah,
But this is one of those things, especially because at 60 issues plus a couple crossover specials, it's not a long thing to invest yourself in. There's certain books that they're very inviting that way. Chew is one, Preacher, Ex Machina, a lot of the Brian K. Vaughan stuff, Why the Last Man. There's a lot of good series like this, but Chew was something special. Something in the way that the art is very cartoony and very stylized, and the way the story is it feels very comedic, but it can get very serious and it can up the tension easily. And then every once in a while, you'll have fucking Poyo, who is a cybernetic chicken, just beating this shit out of other chickens. It's so much fun, and they were working on an animated property of it at one point. I don't know what the
yeah.
status of that is. Speaking of
It's
Dr. Horrible, Felicia Day was supposed to be a part of it.
yeah, no, that was actually really great because, and it was something I wanted to see. And I if it was released, I have not been able to find it because, I mean, yeah, like you said, there's Dr. Horrible, with Felicia Day in there, but Robin Williams was in there playing. Oh, I cannot think of the character, not the fat guy in
Yeah,
there. Yeah, it was going to be animated, so this is going to be Robin Williams doing a part in there. Um, I am
which
blanking
may
on
have
his name.
led to some of the holdup on it. Is I think they had to
Yeah,
recast after Robin Williams sadly was taken from us.
yeah.
Um,
And then Stephen Yun was going to be Tony Chu.
yes. It was one of those things
Yeah.
that, again, I love the property. I'm excited to see anything happen with it. So the question is this? It says it's a crossover built into the new property, quite the liberty. The old property was Chew. Is the new property going to be Swallows? Following the bird
um,
theme.
I was going to go further down the rental property of food. Uh, sort of going the other end or something. I don't know, but I mean, I'm excited to see this. I don't know when it's coming out. There's not, like I said, there's not a lot out on this art on this from where we found this on Bleeding Cool, but I just figured, hey, that'd be cool to mention because people that um have been watching us for a long time and we've talked about it and they love it too.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
yeah, so
and I don't know that Rob Guillory is involved in it. It's only really talking about John Layman's next series. I would like to see Guillory at least have some part in it. But they both are makers of great comics, and so this should be something that if you like comics, it should get you excited.
yeah, definitely. But yeah, that's gonna do it for the Else News, and we will be right back.